Hi, welcome back to UQ. In this video, I will talk about the book Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert B. Cialdini. Since its release in 1984, this book has been read by business people for over 30 years and has become a world-renowned bestseller, selling over 2 million copies. The author, Robert B. Cialdini, is a prominent social psychologist from the United States, and his book contains slightly dangerous information that could be used to manipulate people's minds if used improperly. Specifically, the book describes the 6 truth triggers that can control people's minds, which can be seen as a form of manipulation. Understanding the essential content of these psychological triggers can make you less susceptible to clever sales pitches or fraud. Scammers are already using the psychological triggers described in this book to their fullest extent. While there may be some minor differences, most scam-like activities can be explained using these 6 triggers. So if you can understand these psychological triggers, you'll be able to recognize when a scammer is using their techniques and which one. In other words, you'll be able to uncover the tricks that scammers use by yourself. Furthermore, if you not only understand the psychological triggers, but are also become capable of practicing them, which requires some training, you'll be able to manipulate people's minds with a high degree of probability. These techniques should not be misused for wrong purposes, but I believe that everyone who watches this channel is a good person. Therefore, I have selected 3 essential triggers that I want you all to know and explain them thoroughly. I will also briefly explain the 3 other triggers. Let's get started. The first trigger is the principle of reciprocity. As the name suggests, this trigger involves a feeling of obligation to return a favor when someone does something nice for us. This trigger is widely used in business and marketing, and a common example is the use of free trials. When we receive something for free, we feel obliged to reciprocate in some way, and this trigger can be used to encourage us to make a purchase. Since you have probably understood the general idea, let me continue to explain the terrifying nature of the reciprocity trigger, which has actually been scientifically proven through experiments. This psychological trigger works even if you don't like the person who gave you something. Furthermore, it still works even if you receive something you don't want, and it can even lead to the terrifying effect of feeling like you have to return more than you received. It's scary, isn't it? If reciprocity is triggered, it's usually not a good thing. It has been said there's no such thing as a free lunch, and this statement holds true. Logically speaking, it is impossible to give something away for free without a motive. The fact that this is being offered for free implies that the provider must have a plan to recover the lost costs. This may apply to YouTube or any other free service. It is important to keep in mind that there may be hidden motives behind free offerings. It's also important to point out that this trigger should not be used for manipulative or unethical purposes. When used ethically, reciprocity can be a powerful tool for building strong relationships and creating win-win situations. The second important psychological trigger is called the principle of consistency. The concept is quite simple. People tend to act in ways that are consistent with their previous actions or commitments. This tendency is part of human nature. Everyone wants to believe that they are rational and consistent. Unfortunately, we are not that rational, and we are creatures that make decisions based on instincts and emotions. Yet, those who are easily deceived believe that they are always capable of making rational judgments. For instance, when someone makes a significant purchase and pays a high price for it, the psychological trigger of commitment and consistency can come into effect. Let's think about buying an expensive watch as an example. Even though it may be an unpleasant topic for watch enthusiasts, I apologise. Let's say, hypothetically, that I don't really understand the appeal of Rolex, other than it being a symbol of success. Despite that, I took the plunge and bought one anyway. But when I actually wore it, deep down, I realised that it wasn't really any different from a regular watch. In fact, I thought that automatic watches like Rolex stop running after a couple of days if left untouched, and it's inconvenient that they don't run on batteries. So I wondered if I really needed a Rolex and if another brand would have sufficed. However, people want to believe that they are rational and that the things that they spent so much money on are truly amazing. So what they do is naturally start to gather positive information about the Rolex, for example. As a result, they only hear about the good things about the Rolex and ignore the negative aspects. They become submerged in positive information about Rolex to rationalize their decision and to maintain their belief that they made the right choice. Eventually, they become Rolex enthusiasts, even more so than when they first made their purchase. As people become more of a devotee of a brand, they may start to criticize other brands or cheaper watches. When this happens, it's the best situation for the seller of Rolex because the customer will no longer stray to other products. Of course, some customers may genuinely appreciate the intrinsic value of the Rolex brand beyond its practicality. However, when it comes to expensive products that require a large sum of money, the trigger of consistency and commitment is so strong that many people are simply swayed by it. Speaking of watches, it's all about personal preferences, so it's fine. But if we talk about cases of misuse, companies that solicit investment use this trigger effectively. Of course, not all companies do this, but I think there are companies that use this principle of consistency to establish malicious practices. Specifically, their modus operandi is to first present an incredibly cheap estimate without including small expenses or taxes. They come with a quote that suggests the investment is unbeatable and will earn profits beyond imagination. Then, they urge potential customers saying, "It's not a bad deal, right? If you have some money, you would like to try it, wouldn't you?" And if the customer agrees, saying something like, "It's not a bad deal and actually quite good. I would like to invest and try it out," then it's a checkmate for the company. They start to talk in detail, and here is where it becomes malicious. They suddenly mention additional costs and taxes that were not disclosed earlier. At times like this, if the human brain were truly rational, then we would be able to say, if these additional costs will be incurred, then it will be a loss compared to the initial plan, so I won't do it. But it doesn't always work out that way. When you declare to a salesperson, friends and your spouse that you're going to invest in something, the commitment and consistency trigger is strongly activated. As a result, you proceed with the contract thinking that you couldn't possibly be making a wrong decision. While this is just an example, there are many cases of solicitation that misuse the consistency trigger, especially when high costs are involved. Therefore, please be cautious. Authority is the third psychological trigger described in the book. According to Cialdini, people have a natural tendency to follow the guidance of those who are perceived as experts or leaders in a particular field. The principle of authority can be harnessed by marketers and salespeople to persuade potential customers to take a desired action. By presenting themselves as knowledgeable and trustworthy, businesses can establish themselves as authorities in their respective industries and increase the perceived value of their products or services. Additionally, by leveraging the authority of third-party endorsements, such as celebrity endorsements or industry awards, businesses can further enhance their credibility and influence potential customers. Authority is a powerful tool for persuasion, as it appeals to our desire to trust and defer to those who possess specialized knowledge or expertise in a particular domain. In this video, we delved into Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, a book that offers a wealth of information on how to influence people's thoughts and behaviors. In essence, humans have psychological triggers that can move us, even when our rational minds know better. Although there are 6 of these triggers, we focused on 3 that I believe are essential. The first is reciprocity, which makes us feel obligated to return a favour. The second is the consistency principle, which motivates us to act in line with our past statements or actions. Finally, or third, there's authority, where we tend to follow and trust individuals who excel in one area, assuming they excel in all other areas as well. These are the first 3 triggers I've discussed so far. The remaining 3 are the principle of scarcity, the principle of liking, and the principle of social proof. The principle of scarcity is the belief that things become more valuable when they are rare or difficult to obtain. The principle of liking is the tendency to be more easily influenced by people who we know, like, and trust, or who are similar to ourselves in some way. The principle of social proof is the tendency that people tend to look to others for guidance on how to behave in uncertain situations, particularly when they are unsure of their own judgment. These 3 triggers are relatively well known even without reading the book, so I didn't go into detail since they are quite common knowledge by now. Personally, I think that simply having a general understanding of psychological triggers is sufficient, but I'm not suggesting that we should try to manipulate others using these triggers. It also takes significant training to do so. However, understanding these triggers can help us to become more aware of our own thought processes and decision making, as well as to recognize when others may be trying to influence us. Even just a basic understanding of them can help us avoid being scammed by fraudsters in today's world. What I really want to emphasize is that when making important decisions in life, such as buying something expensive, choosing a job, or getting married, it's crucial to consider whether we genuinely believe in the value of the product, service, or person, or if we are simply being influenced by psychological triggers. If we make a decision based on triggers, we may regret it deeply later on. Although it's challenging to determine whether our judgment comes from our true feelings or just psychological triggers, let's do our best to be mindful and discerning. With that cautionary tale, I conclude this video. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel, hitting the like button, and leaving a comment. I've also included a link to the book we discussed in the description box below. It's a highly recommended read, so check it out if you're interested.